Beep boop. Hey guys. I realize that there's some of my writing stuff that I have done in the past that is interesting and that I would kind of like to talk about. It helps to understand me a little bit. I wrote what's called a bachelor's thesis. Those aren't required in America. In America, all you have to do is complete your coursework at most colleges. And that just means you have to go to all your classes and pass all your classes. But I was in what's called an honors program. And in the honors program, you had the option of writing what's called a bachelor's thesis, which allows you to graduate with what they call highest honors. And you get to wear a medal, and it's supposed to be more prestigious, but it kind of wasn't. Anyway, I wrote this thesis, and it's always looked at by professionals as interesting, but not quite literary, because the focus of it was strong female characters in non-standard serial media. And I'm going to unpack that for you. What that means is female characters, in general, in history, they are only allowable as characters when they are either weak, like physically weak and need the help of a man. They stop acting like females, like they just act like a guy. They pretend like they're a dude. Quite often actually assuming a role of a man so that people will take them seriously. Or they lose their character, in which they basically society treats them as an outcast because they want to be a woman, but they also want to do their own thing. So strong female in character. And this story was in non-standard and non-serial non-standard serial media. So that means not books. So basically, and originally it was going to contain one book, but it was an analysis of 4 of 5 characters that I ended up cutting down to 3 because I ran out of time. The 5 characters were going to be Sarah Connor from the Terminator stories, the first movie and the second one mostly, because after that they kind of go off the rails. The character of Liara from Mass Effect, which is a video game. The character of Invisible Woman from comic books, who later became in a movie, The Fantastic Four. And then 2 characters that I didn't get to, which were the Khaleesi from Game of Thrones and Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So the thing that I did with my selection process was they had to be traditionally female, which means they had to be girly in some way. Usually the introduction had them in a situation that is not masculine at all. They could not start out as a masculine character. They had to be female, which with all that comes with that. Then in each of these, they had to grow over time, and there had to be a gap in which that growth could continue out of the sight of the person watching. There were a lot of people who believe that character development can happen in a single work, but I feel like the most important character development happens between a first and second work, because you get to see what the character chooses to do. There's usually some final revelation at the end of a story in which a character learns something or changes something about themselves, and then you don't know if the character is going to continue based on that change. But in the cases of the 3 that I covered, there's a gap in between the first story and the second story, and you get to see the dramatic difference in the character based on what they've gone through. If you're not familiar with those stories, Sarah Connor starts out as a waitress. She is a waitress, and in the very first scene that you meet her in the movie, she is working at a very, very busy but kind of trashy diner, and a little kid puts ice cream in her pocket. just like a whole glob of ice cream into her pocket. And that's her introduction to the character. Through the course of the movie, a machine is sent back through time because she is going to have a child who will save the world from the future Terminators. Also, a single soldier is sent back, and he is to be the father of said child. So it's a fascinating internal story. But what's really, really cool is if you've ever seen the movie, she stays kind of scared the whole first movie. She's running away, and even when she's fighting, she's still scared. And then the second movie, she's badass. She's a complete badass. She never lets go of the fact that motherhood is her primary guiding concern. So she's always trying to get back to her kid. But they treat her like she's crazy, and they lock her up. But the first time you meet her, she's doing pull-ups on her hospital bed, which she has rearranged. And she's locked up because she stabbed one of her doctors in the knee while trying to escape. The best part about it is that she is incredibly powerful physically. But when she's escaping later on, the first time she runs into the Terminator, she starts scrabbling backward, and you see this terror in her face that's an echo of the first movie. And it's so good. It's so cool. Similarly, let's go with Liara next. Liara is a character in Mass Effect. When you first meet her, she is suspended in the air with her arms and legs spread out, completely helpless, and you walk up and save her. Now, Commander Shepard can be male or female. That's the main character of Mass Effect. But Liara's race comes from a group of aliens that are entirely female. And most of her first storylines are very, very female in that it's all about her issues with her mother. And her mother trying to tell her what to do and her trying to make her own way. And even though she is a learned scholar who's been around much longer than Commander Shepard, I think she's 100 years old when you first meet her, she's not respected. She's the cheesy scientist and love interest of the character. So she's kind of traditionally female in the first game. In the second game, spoiler alert, Commander Shepard dies in the opening scenes. And basically his body is rescued. And then somebody named the Shadow Broker basically works to get him to a group of people who can take over, who can bring him back to life, who can restore, his life and his memories and all that sort of stuff, because it is sci-fi magic future. But you find out halfway through the game, as you're building another team, that Liara has become the Shadow Broker to save you. That's why she did it. She basically saves the universe by saving you, and because she's such a badass. So she infiltrates a shadow organization. She takes it over. She is involved in all this stuff, all this espionage, even though she was basically a languages professor in the first game. And yes, she learned to fight, and yes, she learned all this stuff from you, but still, she goes from being this girlish, quirky character to this head of a criminal syndicate just so she can save you and give the universe a chance. It's pretty badass. Finally, in long ago, when the Fantastic Four was just starting, they had this character called the Invisible Girl. And the Invisible Girl was a joke. She was invisible, but never used it for anything smart. She would sneak away, she would hide, and then she'd invariably get caught. She was basically just there as a plot device. She had very little agency of her own. She was married to one character. She was the sister of another character. And she was the secret love interest of the third character, even though he would never get her because she was married to the first character. So basically, she was just the hub that the wheel rotated around. But in modern times, and there was a comic event called Civil War, which was way more in-depth and interesting than the Captain America Civil War, but also a little messier, where we get to see, and the Fantastic Four was, to me, the crowning achievement of the Civil War comics. But it had her confronting her husband, because her husband was working with the fascists, basically, the Iron Man side, which was saying we should have a registry and a database of every superhero so that if anything goes wrong, we can find them. Basically, hold them accountable. But it was taken way too far, and people were hurt, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so right when she decides that she's going to, and this is huge departure. Her original character started in, I think, 63 with the, or no, actually earlier than that, because it was Fantastic Four. That's when X-Men started. Anyway, a long time ago. And then in the 90s, 2000s, in the 2000s, 20-teens even, she had been around for so long. She is a woman now. She and Reed have kids, and so when he does something unforgivable, she basically gives him as perfect of a day as she can. They spend time with the kids. They do a bunch of stuff. She makes him a special dinner. She sleeps with him. That part got a little weird. But then she says that he needs to fix this, and she's not going to be with him until he does. So she leaves. And the next time that they meet, she has saved a group of the radical, I guess you would call them terrorists, on Captain America's side. It was still Captain America versus Iron Man, but the reasoning was way different. Anyway, she saves a group of them by making them invisible at an opportune moment. And he confronts her, and she says to him, I'm helping them. And he's like, I'm doing this to protect you. And she basically, one of the things that she gets along with invisibility is the ability to project force fields. So she projects a force field they're on like an 80-story building. She projects it all the way down to the parking lot levels and all the way up to the highest levels, and says, do I look like I need protecting? It is one of the most badass moments in the entire Civil War. Right up there with Captain America beating up Punisher, and Punisher refusing to hit him back. But it is just a perfect moment of, you're a smart man, but you can't use me as an excuse. Stop using me as an excuse. And she's a badass. And it's such a wonderful culmination, because there have been essays written about how she was just a prop in the early stuff, about Invisible Girl to Invisible Woman, and how she basically, her primary power was being invisible, which is a very female power. So the purpose of my thesis was to examine, hey, are we living in a magical time? Are we living in a time in which we can finally have women who are strong and female and have character all at the same time? Can we really have it all? And I feel like we're slowly getting to the point where we can. We are. But it is so much work. Because so many people want there to just be reboots and randomly shoving women into male roles and trying to make it work. But it doesn't. We need to give people their own stories. We need to have, and people are finally figuring it out. We need to have black people with black stories. We don't just need to have, an all-black reboot. We need to have women with their own stories. We don't just need to have, it was a comedy thing with 4 men, let's shove 4 women in there and see if it works. It's not, you don't replace it without doing a lot of extra work. And people have trouble with that. So, anyway, that was my bachelor's honors thesis. And I recorded another video but got interrupted, so we'll see if editing magic can fix it a little later. But this is my new video, and I'm still talking, so I will shut up now. Nice to see you guys. Hope you have a great Easter break. Bye.